but I'd like to welcome everybody to Inside the Dancers Studio. Thank you all for coming out on this Sunday. You're probably all as sleep deprived as I am, so hopefully that sugar rush will last about 40 or 45 minutes, and then you can crash right before your next class. But thank you for coming. This is always a special part of the event for me, and has a long history of talking to some interesting people, and we will continue that tradition this year. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Ryan Swift. I am your, oh, thank you, sir. I'm your head DJ this weekend, and I also am a DJ in New York City. I run a dance every Thursday. It's from Fram Jam. If you've been to New York, you might have heard of it. But I also am the host of the Track Podcast, which comes out every month. I don't know if you guys have heard that or not, but thank you. It's a lot of fun. I do encourage you to check that out. I have one-on-one conversations with dancers and musicians. I've talked to two of my panelists already. I will probably get to this third before too long, but that's who I am. We're going to sit down, we're going to chat, we're going to talk about dance, we're going to talk about where these guys came from, some of their thoughts about Lindy Hop, some of their thoughts about performing and teaching and all those good things. So without further ado, I would like you guys to please welcome to the couch Mikey Pedroza, Kevin St. Laurent, and Joe Hofberg. Please give them a big round of applause. Yeah, Mikey needs to be as far from me as possible. Thank you. That's in my rider. These folks probably do not need much of an introduction because you've been learning from them all weekend. I hope those classes have been good. In case you aren't familiar with their resume, I will just say they are three of the most accomplished, versatile, and creative dancers in the world, except for Mikey. No, all three of them. I was looking at their resumes, and if I were to list everything that they've won, we would be out of time before I even got halfway through the list. They have won championships at the US Open, Canadian Swing Championships, Camp Hollywood, American Lindy Hop Championships, European Swing Dance Championships, Camp Jitterbug, Ultimate Lindy Hop Showdown, International Lindy Hop Championships, and perhaps most importantly, the Lone Star Championships.
Lone Star.
So you've probably heard of them is what I'm saying. You've seen them on YouTube. So first off, let's just get this out of the way early. Despite all of those accomplishments and accolades, possibly the first thing that comes to mind to anyone when you're mentioned is your hair. What it's going to look like, how long does it take to style.
I get that a lot,
So
actually.
Kevin, do you have any tips?
No,
is really what I'm looking for.
I'm happy to talk about it. I prefer not.
I could see that coming from a mile away. I was like, I'm not even going to put the microphone to my mouth. Like,
That's probably the first and last time that will happen for Mikey this session as well. So, no, congratulations on your hair, Joe. I'm very jealous. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. I worked hard to get the genetic lottery ticket of lots of hair.
You've got Kevin and me both lapped several times. So
But you guys can grow a beard.
that's true. We're clearly compensating.
Yes.
try hard enough, Joe.
Well, thank you. All right, so getting started for real. I'd love to know, if you could, you guys are all from generally the same part of the country, but I would like to know just where you're from and where you got started dancing. So, Joe, why don't we start with you and just work our way down the couch?
I grew up outside of San Francisco, California, and I would say I spent my formative years trying to go into San Francisco so that I could do as much Lindy Hop as was possible at the time. And then I eventually went to school down in Southern California, where I got to meet Mikey Pedroza and the LA crew. And then I ran into Kevin. Actually, Kevin was one of the dancers in San Francisco when I was younger. And I ran into him later on, and then the adventure kind of began from there. So the early years were San Francisco, and we were the Wiggly Hop crew. Like, we knew how to hold hands, stare at the floor, and wiggle our bodies, mostly in time.
Otherwise known as spaz jazz.
Yeah.
Kevin, where did you start? Where are you from?
My family followed my dad. He was U.S. military, so I was raised on the coastal regions of North America and Japan, but I definitely claim California. I was born in Orange County, and I spent most of my time dancing in California. I would say I got the roots of my dancing in California.
And Mikey?
Yeah, the same thing. I claim Orange County, but it's Mission Viejo. That's where I'm actually from. And yeah, born and raised. I still live in the same area and neighborhood, and it feels good.
So we're getting some American West Coast flavor, not West
California?
Coast, but California.
Yeah.
We'll get
Right,
some.
the Californians.
It's the best coast.
Get some
I took the
insight on what
101
it
up
was
to the
like dancing in
5 and I
California.
come over on Sepulveda Boulevard. Okay.
When did you start dancing? Joe, how old were you when you started dancing?
I was about like 15, 16. It was somewhere around there, and I just was like, oh, aerials, definitely want to jump off of other humans. And there were boys there, so I was like, well, I think this could be a lot of fun. And more importantly, there was kids that I was not going to high school with. So I was like, this is totally my place. So once I decided that it had everything I needed, I could jump off of humans, there were cute boys, and people that I was not going to high school with, I was sold. So that's what got me here today.
Mike, I'm assuming it was the same for you?
All the boys.
All the
Yeah.
boys.
How old were you when you started?
I was about 12 or 13.
Early?
Yeah, my brother started. My older brother is about 4 years older than me, and he hated high school like with a passion, and he looked for anything to do besides that, and he found this half-page advertisement for a place called Memories in Orange County, and yeah, and he went. She started going, and he started taking lessons, and then he taught me, yeah, this is going out, so whatever. Cool. Or let me just do this one instead. There we go. Cool. Yeah, so he started taking lessons, and my mom was kind of making fun of him one day, and then he got up in front of me and my mom and did Charleston, and then taught it to me, and so I learned Charleston in my living room from my brother, and then like a couple weeks later I started taking lessons, and I was about 12 or 13 years old.
And Kevin, I think we've got a photo of, of when you started dancing.
You don't
If
have
you
the
could just...
he has the photo.
Kevin. How old were you when you started dancing, Kevin?
Right. Is it child abuse? That's the question. So similar to Mikey, it was an older sibling. My sister, 3 years old, 3 years older than me. She wanted to dance, so she started dancing. And because of logistics in Florida, we lived in Jacksonville, Florida at the time. I had to come to her dance classes because and my mom wouldn't drop an 8-year-old off at home and then come back, blah, blah, blah. So I was throwing rocks outside of the dance studio in the alley because I was waiting for my sister's class to stop. So then after a month of that, my mom was like, might as well throw my kid and my son into the classes as well. And then now I'm the full-time dancer and my sister is not. So there we go.
I think you should bring this outfit back is what I'm saying. Next year's ILHC.
Yeah, it's funny. I will note, just so you understand my family dynamics, those were the photos I had as a child. I danced tap, ballet, and jazz 8, 9, and 10. And then I did 1 year where I played football, Pop Warner football in California. And from that moment on, my dad I think he might still have it, but like that's the one photo he has of me. It's me in my football gear, the whole thing, you know? But most of the photos from my childhood are me in this kind of outfit, dancing. And there's just that one moment in time my dad's like, I'm going to use this as a representation of who my son is.
I think I'm just going to leave that right there. So California, you guys, I mean, I started dancing in New York State on the East Coast, which was its own separate kind of pocket. But dancing in California, it seems like you guys had there were a lot of differences at the time, especially 20 years ago. Mikey, I know that we've talked about this, but what was it like dancing in Southern California in the early days of when you were getting started? Because you had access to a lot of people that like we didn't have access to on the East Coast.
I mean, it was very similar in the same ideas as a lot of people hear about on the East Coast, especially in the New York area, with a lot of the old timers, like how they would get together at Small's Paradise, or I forget the name, but it was like a basement type place in New York, and it would just be all the old timers, all the ones, the originators, and then like the next generation after that.
The Cat Club.
The Cat Club. And what we had on the West Coast was Bobby McGee's and also Golden Sales. And these were legendary places for us. And when you walk in, does not look or smell legendary. Like it is a dirty old bar, poorly lit, you know, buffalo wings and sauce on the side, like legitimately like bar open. And yeah, I would be like 13, 14 years old, and we'd go in there, and my brother would just be like, don't order, don't go to the bar, don't do anything, just dance and just like watch everybody. And it was quite amazing to be surrounded by the old timers of Balboa and Bal Swing, and yeah, a lot of those swing dances that cruise through there in Southern California, especially. That was my education. Like me trying to go out there like with one person dancing, being stopped halfway by one of the old timers and being like, "You're doing it wrong." And then like they go sit down and you're like, "Okay." But I mean, that was part of it. And the other part of it was huge. Everywhere there was dancing, at least in 2 places, every night of the week, Monday to Sunday, every night of the week, including Disneyland. Which, by the way, Disneyland is probably, I would consider still, the longest running swing dance. Because from the week Disneyland opened, Disney had live music and dancing at what used to be called the Carnation Plaza, but now I think it's like Princess Alley. I don't know.
They named it after me.
Yeah. And it's and so it's still running every Saturday night. There's dancing with a live band at Disneyland because Walt wanted it, and that was what I grew up with. Like tons of people dancing all the time, lots of different things, and you had to wear international male pants.
Really?
Yeah.
They
were big.
That was the dress code, or like you felt obligated?
Both. Like it was like a lot of my older friends, like they weren't really my friends, they were my brother's friends telling me what to wear, and I was like, okay. I mean, much like that one, like not Frankie, this one.
Frankie's way better dressed.
much like Kevin, like okay, just dress me up, except it wasn't pink and tight, it was like large and way too baggy.
So speaking of dancing with old timers, how many folks, by the way, were at Lindyfest last year? All right, so only about half of you. I'm disappointed, but you're making up for it this year. But last year, we had the pleasure of talking with Gene Veloz, and Mikey did a demo with Gene Veloz, who is a legend. And I'd like to just show you guys that missed it, just about a minute of what we got to see last year. Mikey's much better dressed now. So Bobby, if you don't mind, if we could hit the house lights too. If that's not possible right now, we'll just watch.
She's also fine. Someday I'd like to make her mine on mine. She's fine, but she won't give me a chance. When I want the sweet talk, all she wants to do is dance. Oh, let me tell you, she likes the moving and the grooving. Man, she likes the moving and the grooving. Rock in the night out and the day in. She likes the swishing and the swaying. Oh, she likes the moving and the grooving. Watch her move, 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 move. Ask her to a movie just
All right, Mikey with Gene Veloz, everybody.
That was legitimately one of the most like happiest dance moment in my life, because like I remember watching her and being really honestly have a crush on her. Like you guys have seen her in the movies, right? A little bit. Go watch it. It's just the cutest woman and the most brightest soul I've ever been encountered with. And I took that moment like, oh, this is an honor to dance to you. She's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Like you'll do fine. And she picked that song too.
It was great.
She picked a Sam Cooke song, and I was like, ooh, girl, you got me. You got me.
I encourage you guys to go check out the whole video. It's on YouTube, and also the whole conversation from last year is also on YouTube. So go check that out if you missed it. Gene is an absolute delight, so don't miss that. Kevin and Joe, just real quickly, San Francisco is a little bit different than Southern California. What was it like? What was it like for you guys getting started? What was the scene like back in the day?
Well, I think it was a huge contrast. Well, first of all, I started Lindy Hop in 1993. And specifically, I started West Coast Swing and Balboa. And they were linked. Like when I was learning Balboa and West Coast Swing, they're like, oh, do you know the Shim Sham? Oh, do you know Savoy Kicks? So learning all that early on. But then when the swing craze hit San Francisco, it definitely went down what Joe was referring to, what we now call the wiggly hop or spaz jazz. It was more of this hold hands with your partner and then articulate the rest of your body, hyper musicality as much as you can, as well as wear orange sweatpants, t-shirts, bring a towel, bring a water bottle, that whole thing. And whereas you had, in contrast, Los Angeles, those guys look sharp. They knew how to dress, and so we had a really big contrast between the two.
At the time, San Francisco primarily danced to slower tempo music, where LA, based on my experience, was much higher tempo. So I felt like when Northern and Southern California would come together, often Southern California would just totally clean the floor with the San Franciscans, but a slower tempo song would show up and they would still do their fast tempo, Lindy Hop, slower, and it looked very funny. And we're like, well, we know this thing called West Coast swing, and it's when it still swung, because it doesn't swing now, which is not a diss, it's a recognition of the music that they're dancing. It can, but now it's very fancy in a different way. But at the time, I felt like we could dance to slower music. So we each had our strengths, and we definitely wore more orange. I'm pretty sure that's what that was.
There was a lot of orange.
There was a lot of orange.
So, like I was saying earlier, speaking of meeting up with folks from different scenes, you guys did start young. Do you remember your first competitions? Do you remember what that was like?
Mostly.
Mostly?
The answer is yes, and that's how we're going to leave it.
Okay. Well, it's not how we're going to leave it, because we've got some clips. I don't know if these are first competitions, but these are early competitions. And the first one,
Yes.
is Mikey Pedroza in 1999. I'll give you guys about a minute of this, and we'll just to get some context of this.
Yeah, that's good. That's probably all we need.
All right, I think that's enough for Mikey right now. Enough for Mikey Pedroza. And just a couple of short years later, Joe, you were a totally different person back then, in more ways than one. But in 2001, there was a great performance at ILHC with Todd Yannicone. Let's pull that up, Bobby, if you've got a second for that. Here we go. I'll just give you guys a little taste of this one, too.
Love me, leave me, and let me be lonely. You won't believe me, but I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else. You might find the nighttime the right time for kissing. Nighttime is my time for just reminiscing, regretting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. I want your love, don't wanna borrow. Have it today to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love, there's no love for nobody else.
All right, give it up for Joe and Todd.
And that's a good representation of San Francisco versus Los Angeles, right?
Whoa,
there.
whoa, hold up. Why'd you guys show the good one instead of the one like that same year that I did mine? She was in like this like sailor suit type thing.
It's been scrubbed from the internet. That's why.
No. Oh, I have it. I have it on my hard drive, girl.
We'll post this to the
please.
website next year.
No, it's okay.
But you guys have. I mean, do you guys remember how you placed in those competitions? Do you remember?
I won.
Okay.
You kidding me?
Joe.
We also won that year, and I think we beat Sky and Ramona, which was, I know, right? Everyone's like, what? It was the great upset of 2001.
So those were great starts for you guys. I don't have anything way back from Kevin, but those are great starts from all of you guys.
Video cameras weren't very prolific back then.
I couldn't find the pink outfit routine. I was really looking. But you guys had great starts early on competing and have spent the last 15, 20 years competing in various forms. I'm just curious, if any of you are welcome to answer this question, but how has, do you think, dancing competitively shaped you as a dancer in that time? Kevin's handing off. Anybody? One of you has to
Okay.
answer.
Can you repeat the question? How has
I'm going to just show that video again.
How has competition shaped
Yeah,
you?
how has dancing for competition shaped you as a dancer? You know, does it have a different mindset for you? Do you think it's made you work in a certain direction? Has it impacted your work ethic at all? Or
So before I was a dancer, I played sports. I was a diver and a fencer, and so I had a sense of like, okay, if you're going to do something, you're going to go to practice regularly. You've got a coach. You have somebody who pushes you beyond your comfort within reason. And it was great to get to work with divers or fencers of multiple skill levels. So I often had an opportunity to practice not only observing people that were stronger divers or fencers, but I also got to work more closely with them. So I felt like I was surrounded by people who supported and pushed me to get better, but there was also rigorous training. So I was training minimum 3 times a week. So there was a sense of when I started getting ready to compete, I brought that in because that's how I understood to get ready for competition. So I would say from the work ethic of how often I needed to be in a dance studio, if I could find somebody to help work with me, knowing that there's only so much I could see, but that I had worked with some really great coaches when I was younger, so it felt like how could I find other people to help me modify what I was doing. In more recent years, it's often figuring out different ways that I can coach myself, or I've now turned it into like coaching programs with other people where I try to get them ready now that I've tried to be more present with my process. So mostly I think about what are the skills that I need, or what are the skills that I'm weakest at so I can train those to be better. So it's kind of changed how I've thought about teaching and just how do I show up and train regularly.
do any of you guys have a good tip that you would give someone that's looking to improve as a competitive dancer? Anything that you would just give some advice to anyone that's out there that's looking at Mikey? Looks like he's ready.
Be good at your dance. Like, I know that sounds like harsh, but be good in the sense of like you're confident enough. Like, not to anybody else's standards, because eventually when you're in the contest, it's somebody else's standards that you're gonna have to deal with. And when you're practicing, when you're doing your stuff, when you're getting ready for that one contest you have in mind, just make sure you feel comfortable in your own dancing, because everything's gonna change as soon as you get out there. But yeah, like be the best that you could possibly be, but understand also when you get out there, that's just 2 minutes, a snapshot of your dance life, and it's not gonna be the end all be all. Like, use that to jump off to the next point, to the next thing that you can be even better.
Remember that you are competing against yourself, not against other people, and more so that you get to, when you're at a competition, you have a shared deadline with other individuals or other artists that are bringing their game. And you want to support them in being the best version of themselves, because if you go out onto the dance floor and let's say a bunch of random individuals say that you have done better, you know that you have done well against other people that have done well. So you want to support the other artists that are putting themselves out there and support what they're doing and their creativity. And it's okay to look different than what is always winning, or it's okay to look different because that's what the art is to you. So remember, you're not trying to beat other people, you're trying to be the best version of yourself, and if you happen to win like a really fancy piece of plastic, awesome. But if not, you can still have done a really great job for yourself because of the skills you've been working and training. So it's about your opportunity, not how you are relative to someone else.
That's the judge's job.
Yeah, that's the judge's job.
They get to relate everybody together.
Yeah.
You just worry about you.
That's great. In addition to competing, which we all know that your resume is super long, but you all started as instructors very early on, and you've been doing it for a very long time. So in contrast to my question of has dancing as a competitor influenced your dancing at all, I'm curious if there's anything that you've learned through teaching that's changed your perspective or your approach to the dance.
Counting.
You don't do it anymore, or you do it more?
I've learned that. I've learned how to count from teaching.
You didn't know how to count before?
No, that stuff up there, we didn't know numbers. We honestly didn't. We're just like, there's a hit. Try to hit that. This move. Okay, that didn't work. This move. Okay, that kind of worked. This move. Okay, that worked. That's all we did.
In contrast, I had teachers since I was 8 years old counting off for me. Yeah. So counting was like, you always dance in rhythm, you always know the numbers, you use them both as a tool.
What, if you could say go back in time and tell those baby dancers one thing 20 years or 15 years later, 20 years later, is there something, like one thing that you go back and tell baby Mikey or baby dancer Mikey or baby dancer Kevin, who we haven't seen yet, but one thing that you would say?
The simplest for me was don't let societal pressures push you away from dancing, because I was made fun of, I was called names and ostracized for dancing, and so I went to sports. When I hit high school, I went to sports, and then at the end of high school, I missed dancing so much, I finally went back to dancing, but even when I actually went back to ballet class, and even when I went into the ballet class, the girls in the ballet class were making fun of me. So it was like yeah. So anyway, so then from that point on, I was just like, I don't care what you think, I don't care what anyone else thinks, and then I was able to start finding my own voice.
Great.
If I could go back, I would tell myself to get into solo dance classes much sooner. So ballet, hip hop, locking, popping, like really anything that I could have spent more time in front of a mirror learning how to move my body. And so since I have reminded myself, oh, I wish I had done that, that is now something I currently do. So I now go to dance classes, and I'm not even in the beginner dance classes. I'm in the basic dance classes, which is a step below the beginner. And luckily, none of you guys show up, so I'm not having to be embarrassed, and nobody knows me as Joe Hofberg. I'm that girl who is terrible in the back. But I show up often because I know that I will get better the more I practice, and so I get to like practice my solo drills when I like get to stand around by myself. So I'm that awkward person that you're like, that must be a dancer in training. So get to dance class would be one of them, and like learn how to code. So I actually would have told myself two things: learn to code a website and go to dance class.
I think I would tell myself like, it's kind of the same idea in a different way. How Kevin it was, how he felt about it. Like there was a lot of pressure from like those older dance friends to be the version of dancer that they were. I don't know exactly where that came from. I have a couple theories of where that came from, and it came from I feel like a lot of that pressure from the old timers, you know, that like straight up like, no, you're doing it wrong, and let me show you what you're doing, and then it kind of got passed down in a kind of negative sense to me, but and I don't know why I stuck with it. I honestly don't know why. Like it was a sort of like rebellion sense for me. It's like at some point I like threw away all the vintage clothes that I had acquired over 3 years, and then just went out dancing in jeans and sneakers all the time. You know, just to kind of a middle finger to the rest of the people out there.
There is a San Francisco inside of you.
Well, were any of them orange, I guess is the next question.
No, God no.
So, he's safe.
Yeah, at least I still look good doing it. So, but it's one of those things. It's like don't fall under the pressures from people to tell you what it is. Find out what it means to you, and then continue doing that. Find the joy in it. Yeah,
that's great. One thing I'd love to touch on, just speaking about teaching and talking about, you've had some experience teaching. One thing I'm curious to know if any of you guys have any bits of advice or tips or anything is, a weekend like Lindyfest can be overwhelming for students because you're bouncing from class to class and instructor to instructor, and you've just got a waterfall of information coming at you, and it's sometimes contradictory, and sometimes you don't know what to think about or what to focus on. Like, do you guys have any kind of like best pointers for someone taking a weekend like Lindyfest, where to help digest or get the most out of a weekend like this? Do you guys have any thoughts about that at all?
Yeah, I have kind of like a little bit of a spiel I usually say for, especially the lower level ones who are the newer ones to the event. It's like, you paid a ton of money to be here, and I know you want to get your money's worth, and that's totally fine, but realize that no matter what you do, no matter how many notes you write, no matter how many video recaps you get, you're not going to remember every little detail in every one of your classes. But what you can try to do is go, I really like that one thing in that one class. Cool, I'm going to hold on to that, practice on that, train on that, like feel it out, and then no matter what, like it will spur to the next topic, and you go, oh yeah, and then that's what happened in this other class, or that's what happened in that same class. if you can just hold on to that one nugget that you really liked out of it, it'll make it worthwhile. It's sort of silly, but it's like the color me mine thing. You know, you make the pottery and you paint it the way you want it, and then you get to take it home. Like, it's something that is meaningful to you as opposed to just a ton of information, a dump of information onto you, and you're just trying to sort it out. So yeah, just like take that one nugget away from one class at a time.
Yeah, that's great.
Similarly, I would say when you are a student, when you go to classes, keep in mind that if the classes are only an hour long, it's impossible for us to tell you everything about the Lindy Hop in that 1 hour. So you're getting a very small snippet of information, and it might sound like it's contradictory information to what another instructor said, but if you can just presence yourself to the class and try to absorb as much of that lesson, despite the other things that you've heard, and then make sense of them later, you might actually find that a lot of the information is in alignment, but you just don't have all of the other connector pieces. So just try to be like the best sponge you can and get as much out of the class, and then decide later, like, what is the takeaway and how can I use this to be the better version or the best version of myself until I get the next round of information, and then that will help me improve to the next step. So take it step by step. You're not here to to completely transform your dancing, because it doesn't happen in 2 or 3 days. It's a regular process that you'll have to work at continuously if you want to continuously be a better dancer. So just enjoy the weekend and then take each piece of information as it comes and just go, sure, how can I best use that to be successful in this class?
Great.
I want to add something too as well. Like, I think we did both had on the same mindset of having like a little bit younger experienced dancers, but like for the more experienced dancers, I got this question a lot a few weekends ago at a dance event of like, how do I bring it back to my home scene? How do I bring it back to my community? Just do it. Just go out there and grab 1 or 2 people that hopefully took that class with you, or 1 or 2 people that you know are passionate, or a group of people, and just get some time at a local studio, like an hour. I'm sure it's probably like 20, maybe at the most $30 for an hour. You split it all between you, and you just share as best you can, and just understanding that it's not going to be the clearest way to teach something, but you're not trying to teach it. You're trying to get it out of you, kind of see what it is, and kind of reformat it, rearrange it a little bit, and then share it with everybody else and see what they have to think about it. Because sometimes the secondhand information can really spur out some really great interactions and experiences.
Great. Kevin and Joe, one thing I'm curious about, you guys have been partners for over 10 years now, which is really incredible. And I'd love to get some thought.
11 long years.
But who's counting, really?
No.
I'd like to actually just show a clip from early on in your partnership, and then I'd like to get some thoughts about this. I don't know, which one is it? Let's see. It's this one right here. Let's have a quick look at this. This is very early on with
I think this is nothing.
Kevin and Joe.
Nothing.
All right, so when I was doing some preparation, I did notice a theme. Give it up for Kevin and Joe, by the way. I started to notice a theme that we'll see if we can, if the astute audience members can notice the same theme I did. We'll get back to it. I'm going to skip the second clip because we're running a little bit late on time. But one thing that I would love to hear from you guys is you've been teaching together for so. It's unusual to see partners that last that long together and continue to push themselves and develop. And I mean, obviously, you guys had a lot of chemistry 10 years ago. You still have a lot of chemistry today. I was wondering what it takes to have a successful partnership for over a decade. Like, what goes into that?
I think it's fair to say that Joe is technically my fourth dance partner.
Yes.
Right, so it's not accidental. I learned a lot in my first 3 partnerships. Each partnership got continually longer. And so then when I finally got to Joe, I had a lot of lessons that I already learned. So I was able to apply those, and I think it paid out really well. Because we're here at 11 years and we're still going strong.
What were some of those lessons?
Number 1, don't have sex with your dance partner. Yeah, so Joe and I were able to just establish that line early on, and that can really help, because it really helps remove that dynamic, which is pretty unnecessary.
But happens very frequently.
Oh yeah, it happens, and believe me, I understand that it happens.
I mean, I guess I don't have to tell you, but
Been there.
Joe, do you have any other lessons that you learned?
Yes, communication. Not only did we do a song about communication, but being able to be present with what you actually need and what you want, and then being brave enough to communicate that to somebody, and knowing that you trust them to hear what you've said, to process what you've said, and then to encourage you to keep doing that or getting your needs met. And that's assuming this also goes both ways. So it's a simple thing to say, like, be clear with what you want, ask for what you want, and then if you don't get what you want, figure out other ways around that so that either they can have the space they need, or that you get the space you need, or, you know, fill in the blank. It's easier said than done, but it's working through the process of, this is my friend, we are building something together. How is it that both of us can be happy in this endeavor so that we can continue to make art together, but also still feel like happy people? I can't imagine doing this with somebody who I didn't consider a friend, because there's so much time that we spend together, and so many like rooms we've lived in together, and so many beds that we had to share like in our earlier years, and now we get our own beds because we have finally, I think once I got to my 30s, I was like, I want my own bed. I want my own bed. I'm 30. I finally get to have this. So
We've learned to use the pillow technique when we've been pushed in beds together. We just pile the pillows between us. It seems minor, but it actually helps. It's just that little
Advice for
line of
life.
privacy from traveling. What I wanted to say is start off your partnership with what you want in the end. So I wanted a partnership of equality. So, you know, from day one, Joe and I earned the same amount of money. And I know some partnerships, they've started off inequality based on experience, because technically I had more experience than Joe. And so I could have gone like, well, you know, these first couple gigs, I'm going to earn more money, you're going to get paid less. But I didn't want that in a partnership. So I was like, from day one, regardless of our experience level, I was like, we share the money because this is a partnership. And I know plenty of partnerships that didn't do that in the beginning, and they're not working together anymore.
Shocking.
And I would say, maybe on a last note, is that one of the things that was really great for me at the beginning working with Kevin is that I felt like I was supported for my goals and my dreams, instead of trying to be a tool to help Kevin reach his ends. So it felt like, okay, well, I want to dance, but I also maybe need to go get a real job because, you know, I had just graduated from university, and my parents were like, so that real job thing, and I was like, society has told me the same. And I felt like Kevin was really supportive, even though that wasn't going to help him if I was like, oh, well, we'll work together for 2 years and then I'm out. But I felt supported to make the decision that was going to be best for me, and that allowed me to continue to grow into who I was and grow into our partnership. So from the beginning, I felt supported instead of pressured to be a particular person for Kevin. He supported me in being myself, which was incredibly helpful, because as a woman, and at that time, I just felt like, no, I'm really good at following directions. I'm really good at being an A student. I'm really good at hearing what is requested and trying to be that for you, because that was a lot of the training growing up. And so it felt like, I actually don't know what to do with all of this because I haven't had someone support me. So in many ways, I also got a mentor out of the friendship, out of the partnership. So I would encourage you, if you're going to start something, try to be the best version of yourself and be as supportive of the other person, even if it doesn't suit your ends, but you get to be supportive of somebody who hopefully like you love and adore and cherish as friends. So that's hopefully what maybe you can take away from a 10+ year relationship.
Great. I would love to just, Bobby, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. Can you show that second routine that we had of Joe and Kevin from Lindyfest?
Go ahead and show the routine. I just want to say what worked for us isn't necessarily going to work for other people. We're not trying to dictate rules. We just know that these details worked for who we are in our partnership.
Sure. So I'd love to just show an example of what 5 years of partnership developed into. This great team that was, you might recognize Small's Paradise behind us, but it's a little snippet of what happened just a few years ago at Lindyfest. You guys might be noticing a theme developing, but we'll come back to it. So I'd like to just switch gears a little bit from talking about a long-standing partnership and what you guys have done to make that successful. I want to throw a clip up, and then I'm going to talk to Mikey about dancing with someone that you don't work with regularly, and maybe some things we can think about when you're entering a mix and match or a luck of the draw. So before I start it, let's just throw up a great clip of Mikey and Frida from ILHC, and then we'll talk a little bit about that. So here we go. Dramatic pause. So that's Mikey and Frida at ILHC in Luck of the Draw and Mix and Match. I know there's a lot of people that are entering this type of contest, and I can understand how it's easy to build a rapport over a decade, but how do you, I mean, you've obviously danced with Frida before, but how, do you have any advice or tips or ways you approach entering a contest where you've potentially never danced with someone before to be successful in a way of in the eyes of the judges?
I don't know. Like I don't know if like there's a certain way. But the funny thing is yeah, I've danced with Frida a lot of times before that. But there was another contest too, and I think you can't find it online. It's ULHS where I danced with Laura Keat for the first time ever in that contest, and we won that contest. And it was literally like, hey, how's it going? Laura? Okay, cool. I like forgot her name halfway through. Like, and but the thing is I just kind of. At the time, I would just like sneak over to people and just be like, "Can you like do the splits? Like, can you do this like jump aerial thing? Turn around?" And like they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, no problem. Great. Neither can I." But I think it's in building like a quick rapport like that is like treat it like a social dance. Say hi to the person. Like, if you know them a little bit, give them a hug. Like, tell them it like, oh, I'm nervous too. Like, are you nervous? Oh, like this song. Oh, this song is really good. Like, you can actually talk out there. It's not necessarily a performance that needs to be like, wait for the music to start moving. You know, like, you can have fun and just have it be between you and the partner, and your partner. One thing I also say a lot of the times to a lot of my partners, maybe not in a draw, but like in a choreography or a strictly, Joe knows this is that behind the scenes, I'll just say like, hey, I take a minute to be like, hey, no matter what happens out there, it's just between me and you. It's just us. There's no one else out there. Let's just do the best we can, and that's it. And it's just like a sort of a mantra thing, sort of like let's bring it together and have a slow moment before we have to go out there and our hearts start racing like crazy. But one thing, another too, someone like Frida, someone like Joe, someone like Elise, someone like Laura Glace, like those dancers are so vivid in their movement and so amazing with what they have to give into this dance for whatever reason, that I feel like I can't live in my world. I have to live in their world. As a leader, it sounds funny because I'm like, I have the ideas, I have the moves, I like, follow me with this thing. But it's something that I've recently been going under, like the last 2 years or so. And I'm like, if I'm dancing with someone and I can see they've got so much more to say, I'm like, let's go into their world. Let's figure out what it feels like to be there. And I become less of like the initiator and more of the supporter. And I truly believe that we can learn a lot like that, and I can still hold the leader role, but still pay attention a lot more. It's a lot more response than it is just call and response, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's responding. So that's what I definitely feel like with Frida. She's an unstoppable force of nature.
That's true.
And I would be a horrible person if I tried to contain that and be like, just do a swing out. No,
that's great. Thanks, Mikey. One of the things I've noticed over the years about all of your dancing is that you all bring a certain amount of theatricality to your performances that I think is unique to the three of you. You don't see that necessarily with a lot of the other dancers that you see on a competition dance floor or a performance dance floor. And that kind of comes to the surface in different ways. Do you guys think about that consciously when you're putting together a performance, or even if you're just dancing socially? Do you work hard at trying to do more than just a bunch of swing outs and similar moves? Like, do you look, I mean, we'll see some things, like, I know you do, but do you find that you need that to keep things interesting, to succeed, to excel? How do you think about maybe expanding outside of the dance?
I see Lindy Hop as 80% social dancing and 20% performance. And I don't really look at the competition aspect. For me, competition is performance. As Joe was saying, I compete to improve myself, just like the main reason I teach is to improve myself. So when I'm in a performance opportunity, I love the opportunity to do something I wouldn't get to do on the social floor. So it's very simple for me. So it's fun, it's interesting, and it's enhanced. I should say it's based on all my social dancing, but I get all that social expression when I'm social dancing. I get that in jam contests or in Strictly contests. But when it comes time to do a routine, to choreography, you get to control every aspect. So I like to push the boundaries and have fun with it. And also, it gets cold. I get hot when I dance, so it feels like I have to take my jacket off.
Oh. Bobby, if you can, let's pull up Stacia and Kevin. Do you have that handy? Well, let's just have a look at some of the theatrics that
I can't wait to see which
that I was
version
talking
The
about.
one from Harangue, is it? Oh, man.
I like that they're so nervous about, like, I don't know. I've done so many things wrong. I can't possibly even guess what it's going to be.
Since 2007, with the advent of the iPhone, so much has been recorded.
That's true. Let's just have a quick look at this real quick. It's just a little bit of what I'm talking about. No jacket already, so you're good there. All right, Kevin and Stacia, everybody. And I'm going to go in a completely different direction now, but it's along the same lines. Joe and Mikey, you guys had a performance at ILHC just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It's like 3 or 2.5 years ago now. It was very different than your standard swing out Lindy Hop routine. I'm going to put that up there if Bobby can do that, and then I'd just like to maybe get some thoughts real quick before we start wrapping up about what it was like and what your mindset was in trying to be maybe a little bit outside the box at ILHC a couple years ago. Joe and Mikey, everybody. So, just real quick before we run out of time, what was your thought process going into that routine, knowing you wanted to compete, or Joe or Mikey, either one of you, making something different than we see every day?
Watching a lot of So You Think We Dance. A lot of Instagram and like YouTube videos of other dance styles and going like, I want to try that. That was the basis of it. And then for years I had this idea to try to something different, try to spice it up a little bit, because it's like we went into that not looking to win. And this is something actually Kevin gave us a really good note for. We showed Remy, and I think we like one other person before anybody else had seen it. And Kevin gave us a really good like pathway to go. He's like, are you guys trying to win? He's like, no, great. Take out the Lindy Hop stuff, because we had Lindy Hop like straight up like bouncy and kind of fun stuff. And he's like, doesn't need it. Keep going down that same road. And so that really inspired us to go, okay, like let's take it even further. Like let's take that deep dive. But the whole idea with that was to just prove something to ourselves and to try to train something else. Like, what else can we possibly do about this? Like, how come we train ourselves so much so to be Lindy Hop is the happy joy? Why can't it be the full gambit of emotion? And experience sadness, experience love, experience romance, experience like loss, experience just conversation, just being. Like the very beginning is meant to be just like us having a conversation through movement, and that's it. There's no really like love and everything, but the audience will feel that. We've gotten all the things from like it was playful, childish like feelings, like just having fun, to like that was the most lovely romantic thing ever, to like yeah, I cried and I was like, I hope it was good tears. And I could not imagine like that routine came up clearly just between me and Joe, but I could not imagine sitting on the floor at ILHC and staring at anyone else but Joe.
I won't take that personally, but
yeah.
but that's great.
But I also like to add, Joe did that training for like a full month in Madrid with me, almost a full month, and like with a broken foot.
I had fractured my foot before that, so I was still recovering. So it was not only was I being pushed as an artist, but physically it just felt like I cannot move the way I want to move, and I know what that feels like, but I can't. So it was exceptionally frustrating to feel like I want to be this dancer. I see this online, and I want to be there for my partnership with Mikey, and I can't. So there was a lot of struggle for me. So to put that on the floor felt like it just was such a magical moment.
She says can't, but you guys, like, I put her through a training session that like we had never experienced. Like it was mainly me going, let me play this song 15 times, and then you dance. And then she'd dance in front of me, and I'd be like, cool, that part. With the foot out right there, okay, do something from that. It's like, no, never mind, do something else. And then we'd spend hours doing this where I'm just like pointing out different things, and she did not complain once. We never got into a fight until like 3 days before. But during like a training session, we're like, no, you need to do this. No, okay, fine. And then we took a minute and we're like, okay, I do need to do this. Like me being like, I do need to do, you're right, I need to do this thing. And like, okay, cool. And that was the only time we had any bad feelings. Other than that, it was straightforward training. And again, I can't imagine anyone else in front of me besides Joe.
Likewise.
Great. Unfortunately, we are already out of time. It goes so fast, especially with 3 amazing dancers on the couch. But before I let you go, I would be remiss if we did not do my favorite part of this session, which is James Lipton's questionnaire from inside the Actors Studio, which he took from Bernard Pivot, which I am now taking for all of Lindyfest. So I've got 10 questions for you guys. We're going to go rapid fire because we're short on time. So I'll ask a question, and then we'll run down the line. So starting with Joe, you don't all have to have the same answer.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
It's the same. It might be the same microphone.
We're just cold.
So that's why I wore a sweater. Joe, what is your favorite word?
Inconceivable.
Kevin.
Moist.
Awesome.
What is your least favorite word?
Moist.
Pain.
Can't.
That's good.
Or don't.
No,
Don't.
One word.
Like don't do that. Like no, I want to do it.
What turns you on?
The heater.
body control.
Watching someone move so beautifully and with complete composure and emotion and just being present in that moment, that really, really, really turns me on. Yes, all the ways you're
said
thinking,
it.
why not?
What turns you off?
Racism.
Lack of body control.
Just ignorant people. Just very ignorant people.
This might be everyone's favorite question. I apologize for any parents here with their children. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Fuck off. It's the Australian version of that.
Fuck.
What sound or noise do you love?
Chicken attack.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Oh, wow. Go ahead, Mikey.
The HBO sound, because Game of Thrones.
That's a good one.
It's hard to quantify, but it's the. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, but it's not like suction when it releases.
Okay.
Different things like that. Like various sounds that.
I'm going to be working on that
Together
all
this
week.
long, and I never knew that
I'm
about
going to work
you.
on that all week.
Put that down.
What sound or noise do you hate?
That sound.
This is a match made in heaven, these guys. What sound or noise do you hate, Kevin?
High-pitched screaming.
Silence.
You hate silence.
It's that
I hear you.
sound.
What profession...
How dare you? How dare you?
We call that a callback. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt? What profession other than the one you currently have?
I'd like to be a climate scientist.
Sex educator.
Either a nurse or working in the film industry.
Oh, ninja. I replaced my answer. Ninja.
Two very different answers.
Yeah.
What profession under no circumstances would you like to do?
Clergy member.
Agree with that. Go ahead, Mikey.
Race car driver. It's too fast. I don't like going fast. It's fine.
Okay. And our final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
God, your hair is fabulous. Thanks, God.
There's been a mistake. You actually live forever. I'm sending you back.
Oh, I've been waiting to tell you this really funny joke. I'm like, yes.
All right, I think we have to end there. Please, everybody, give a big round of applause for Joe Hoffberg, Kevin St. Laurent, and Mikey Pedroza. Thank you all for coming to Inside the Dancers Studio. Encourage you all.
Thank you to Ryan for
thank you.
interviewing us. Give
Thank
him a
you.
round of applause.
Thank you.